Welcome back inside the Now Morning Show. Now, this evening, Vulgar Fraction Mass Band is hosting an Afrofuturism panel. It's called Future and Futures After Now. This morning, joining us on set is band leader of Vulgar Fraction, Robert Young, and he's also the co-founder and designer at The Cloth, as we all know. And also joining us on set is Afrofuture theorist Ingrid Lafleur. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the show.
Thank
How are
you.
you guys doing this morning?
We're awake.
Morning.
Always a good place to start. Now, Ingrid, I have lots of questions about Afrofuturism because I have no idea what it is. Tell me.
Sure. It's a cultural movement that was coined in the 1990s in the United States. And it basically talks about Black people's futures through the lens of science fiction, fantasy, horror, but we also look at Afro-Indigenous mythologies, legends, cosmologies. We also kind of investigate the intersection of race and emerging tech and science. And all of this is really to create new destinies, new narratives for Black bodies.
Okay. All right. So we're talking using technology to be able to create a new vision, a new way forward. Yeah, to reimagine what, because I mean, growing up, I would say that, you know, you see superheroes in one particular race. So I imagine that that's all part of it, yeah, where we reimagine superheroes and we reimagine carnival and art and everything that's involved in it, yeah?
Definitely. I mean, this is why Black Panther was so popular.
Yeah.
I think it's probably the most popular example of Afrofuturism. But to go a little deeper, it's very ancestral based. It deals with a lot of spiritual technology. So the technology spectrum is very wide.
Right.
We like to reclaim a lot of the invisible histories and ancestral practices and bring them into our present so that we can imagine new futures. So if you saw in Black Panther how spiritual they were, so how that shows up, along with being a superhero, really speaks to our culture, and that's what we're looking to create at all times.
Right. Now, let me bring it across to our culture now, because we're talking carnival, we're talking mass and Vulgar Fraction. You've been involved in carnival and mass for quite some time.
Yeah.
But those things that Ingrid just spoke about sound like it's part of what we already do, because we use the ancestors, we use the spiritual narrative for carnival every single year. We have people who do rituals every year to be able to enjoy and experience and express themselves for carnival.
Yeah.
So how does Afrofuturism play into Vulgar Fraction and mass?
Well, Afrofuturism is a term that's developed recently, but it's a practice that has been continually being there. So, for instance, sailor costumes.
Right.
I just tapping on that. There is a kind sometimes a dreaming of what is a possible space to go to, right? And you can see that showing up as the bubble over the sailor's costume. So it's projections, but there are people like Sunra and the guy who Scratch Perry, right?
Lee Scratch Perry.
Yeah, Lee Scratch Perry. If you watch those albums from that period, like in the 70s, there was a kind of like Sunra, Funkadelic, and really Lee Scratch Perry's albums. All of them had a kind of positioning of spaceships,
Right.
and talking about being alien in this part of the world,
Right.
right? And using, so you see what's happening in. Anyway, I'm not supposed to say that. There, that part of the world. Whatever is happening there happened here.
Right.
500 years ago.
Right.
Right? The same kind of, so there was a Eurasia. So like, for instance, Chantal Esdell, she's looking at the Bradley's coming back to Despers after years of not being there, and then his vision of love and community in my house, the piece of music.
Right.
And looking in depth there of what messages, because people, this Edward Galliano is a historian in the south from Paraguay, or Uruguay. He speaks about we embed our practices with messages for the future.
Right.
And sometimes they're not even known by the maker. But when people investigate it now, so if you go and look at Sailor Mass or look at Moko Jumbies.
Or listen to Any Kaiso.
You see messages that are there for us to live with now.
Yeah.
So the futures after now is this period, and looking at what we want is like planning your life, dreaming an existence of what we want in the future, but using practices that were erased. And I always say, if you, and I didn't really answer your question, if you were to ask from the position of what would my ancestors want, right? Recent ancestors and old ancestors for what a business should look like in our communities. Should I be the only owner? Should I be the only directing person that think about it? Or should I, from the history of this place where enforced servitude, slavery, indentureship, and colonization happened, SIC, S-I-C, that's where we suffer from.
Right.
How do you build a business that imagines a different way of ownership, thinking, leadership? So you might go to the cooperative model, which is now unsexy because it was tried before and people try to imagine sexy things, but some things that we have to do would be very difficult and very emotional, looking at how trauma from our past, so that is futuring, because if trauma is showing up in your life now, is your past showing up now?
Of course.
Right? So it's present. Right? So time is slushy. So we have to look at our existence and how we navigating. So like for instance, our band next year will be tapping on something that Ingrid worked on or spoke to Ayanna Jackson 30 years ago, 15 years ago, about the Drexciya. We are going to do kind of like a middle passage offering.
For Carnival?
Yeah, middle passage offering. So we are going to, hopefully, I could imagine, being tooled with underwater gear to go and put an offering for the dead of the sea.
Okay.
Understood. Our ancestors.
Ingrid, let me jump back across to you because this is all part of the conversation that's going to be happening this evening, yeah? I also want to touch a little bit on what Robert mentioned in terms of the trauma that would have affected what happens in the present and going forward. How do you propose that we are able to imagine a future where that trauma is solved, fixed, it doesn't affect us? I don't know.
No, it's true, because we really want to project from a place of peace, a healing space, pleasure, joy. I think the best way to do that is to really understand where this trauma, the root of the trauma, so that we're not replicating those systems into the future. And that's what often happens. We do like to do a lot of imagining exercises, but people can't imagine an economic system beyond the one that we have now. But the one that we have now, definitely in the States, constantly penalizes Black bodies and shuts us out. So we have to be able to really understand how that system works. So then we're like, okay, now that we understand how it works, let's now think about the alternative. And that can be a little bit jarring, triggering, a little bit of a hard work.
And I imagine it'll be a competition for the system that exists.
Definitely, and they usually just kind of take and absorb that system. For instance, blockchain technology and cryptocurrency was actually created to go up against the capitalist system, and then the banks just absorbed it, right? So yeah, we have to, it's a lot of reworking, and that's why I really think, you know, in the States, cooperative economics was the way that we built our wealth. So kind of coming back to those principles that our elders, that elder wisdom, that's what I'm saying, and the ancestral wisdom coming
and the community.
back. Yes, and coming back to our community. How were we building back when in those more intense oppressive moments? What did we do to survive for me to be sitting here right now, right? And how can that evolve, maybe connect with emerging science and tech that's being created today to protect what we're doing so that we're moving forward. But we don't always have to assimilate or do what has already been done, thinking that that's the best way. But it also means that we have to redefine what wealth is. We have to redefine what healing looks like.
And what happiness looks like to some extent.
Yes.
Robert, who are some of the other speakers who are going to be talking this evening? You mentioned Chantal as well. Ingrid obviously will be there.
Araba Olatunji Sumarin, he is a technologist, basically. He's 21 generations Babalawo and a medicine maker from Nigeria.
Okay.
Who has a practice here, a school, He'll be talking about ether and the tools of looking at your maybe spiritual, your ancestral connection.
All right, so
past
the
and
ancestral
present,
connection,
and then what you need to do possibly in the future. How,
to go
how
forward.
do you do those readings? Because ether has the binary system. It takes up all the possible things that like what computers have used now, but
As the base, yeah.
as the base. But that has been so for hundreds of years.
Way before. Yeah.
Right? So
And
looking
okay,
at
I
that.
understand you have Marsha Pierce
Marsha
as well.
Pierce, she's looking at co-created an exhibition 2019 to 2020 that looked at Caribbean futures with artists. So it's just trying to position them and using the small time to kind of like navigate tools that we have around us of how you could think about your future. But also, a big part of doing this work, to me, is how you deal with your grief.
Right.
How do you deal with your emotions?
Yeah.
And that a lot part of society, our society is now moving towards nothing but pleasure, but pleasure seeking. Whole
Yeah.
weekends are just that, and numbing.
Yeah, numbing,
Right?
a lot of numbing.
Numbing.
Well, I think
Yeah.
we're gonna pause the conversation there because it's gonna continue this evening from 7 p.m. at number 24 Earthwick Road in Belmont, and you can join because it's absolutely free. Just come on down to Earthwick Road, 24 Earthwick Road in Belmont, and you can hear more of the conversation. You can be a part of the conversation as well. Future and futures after now. Thank you so much for joining us this morning on the show, and all the best this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you
Yeah.
for having me.
Not a problem. We take a quick break and come back with more on in our morning show. Stick around.